Hi, everybody. So my name is Jennifer Clark, and I have been with Let's Go Learn for the last 3 years. Before I moved over to Let's Go Learn, I was actually a teacher here. I live in the Austin area. I was a teacher for 15 years for both middle school and high school. And I taught all of the really fun electives. So theater, tech theater, dance, speech, technology, you name it, I taught it, avid leadership. And I was always really drawn to working with students in special education. And so while I was teaching theater, I created an adaptive theater class for special education students. And that kind of took off. And I just really love the idea of my second passion to special education is helping teachers learn different tools and tricks that they can use in the classroom to feel like they're really communicating and engaging with the students in a way that does not add more to their plate, but really teaches them how to utilize tools so that they actually are able to move forward with information as opposed to just kind of sitting and spinning in it. So that's kind of how I got pulled into this as well. I just really love the opportunity to work with you all. So as I'm going through this, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to just go ahead and interrupt. If you have any questions, just kind of about anything in general, I'm happy to help engage. And as I'm going through this, you might have other questions that come up later down the line when you're working with your partner teacher, or if they have any questions. And please know you can also reach out or have them reach out. I'll give you all of my contact information at the end. And I can also talk to them as well if there's an additional layer. I know that we were working with another university at one point, and we got a phone call from the campus principal asking how do we get this as something across the campus just to trial it. And so we do have that opportunity, and anytime we can do that to kind of help support it at the campus level for you, we want to be able to do that. So that's a little bit about me. Like I said, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to go ahead and hop in here and just going to go through a few components of Let's Go Learn and the different bits and pieces that you guys will be utilizing as we're working through it. So a little bit about Let's Go Learn. Like Dr. Sears said earlier, she met with Richard Capone, who is our current CEO. He actually started the company with Dr. Richard McCallum out at Berkeley in 2000. So we've been around for quite a bit. And we quickly became the leader in the diagnostic assessment field when it came to the first ever computer adaptive assessment. So I think that as you kind of work through the assessment, you'll start to see the difference between us and some of the other ones that are out there. And that computer adaptive piece is a huge game changer because it allows us to help you identify true present levels and not just identify where a learning gap is, but where the beginning of the gap is. Because we know that if we can find the beginning of the gap and address that component, everything else kind of starts to fall into place a little bit smoother than when we're trying to pick and choose within a really wide field. So our vision for this partnership is to really help student teachers gain the confidence in developing quality data-driven documents and decisions to serve as tools in the classroom, because it was something that I struggled with when I came out of my undergrad program and through my master's program. Was the moment I got hired, I was responsible for being able to do all of these things, but the program that I was in never actually taught how to look at data and make decisions based on it, and what do you do with it at that point, and how do you make a plan. And so we really wanted to make sure that we are providing that opportunity for you all to use it in a true real life setting. So again, the mission is to just be able to really empower you as an educator. I love the idea of you being able at the end of this whole thing to walk into an interview and confidently talk about the ability to look at an assessment and look at data and say, and this is what I would do with a student based on this information, because a lot of people are not able to do that. So that's kind of our vision and mission for the program. So we can kind of get into the nitty gritty about Let's Go Learn. So we're comprised of three different components. The first one is this adaptive diagnostic assessment that you're going to see here. We offer it in reading and math. So you're able to pick either reading or math as the subject that you work on your case study with for your student. Our reading diagnostic assessment covers kindergarten through 12th grade foundational skills. And then our ADAM slash DOMA, because it is two different assessments depending on the grade and the level, that covers kindergarten through algebraic thinking. So the first one, that ADAM assessment, is kindergarten through 7th grade foundational. And then DOMA actually goes all the way, will dip all the way down to 4th grade, but then can assess all the way up through full algebraic thinking. So through the end of essentially 9th grade math. So those are the two big pieces that you'll want to be thinking about when you're working with your student, because that will be the first step, is this adaptive diagnostic assessment. From that, you have two additional components that you do have access to. The first one is formative assessments. So these are pre-written skills quizzes that you're able to use that will automatically update their information. So once you work with the student, if you want to push out the formative assessment based on that is for the skill that you worked with them on, the student can take it and their data will automatically update. You're not having to do additional grading or additional inputting of anything. It will just automatically populate on the platform. So you can automatically start seeing the growth happening, but this also becomes a really great component for the progress monitoring pieces. Then we have what's called our EDGE program. This is the specially designed instruction for the student. So once the student takes the diagnostic assessment, the EDGE program is going to look at all of their data and create a playlist of lessons that caters to those learning gaps. And it's going to be different for every single student because it's specifically based on their data from the assessment. And as the student is working through it, when they show mastery on a certain skill, any lessons that were coming up that address that skill are going to fall out, and it's going to automatically push in the next skill. So it's not something that you're going to have to constantly be going in and reassigning or anything like that. I will show you how you can assign a lesson today. But just know that if you have a student in the EDGE program and they want to use it and you want to use it as part of your progress monitoring, the program will run itself. You're not having to constantly push in and remove pieces. Do you have any questions or any immediate wonderings before I jump into the actual platform so you can see some of the bits and pieces of it? Okay, so I'm going to jump in here to our live drive. And the first thing that I want to point out to you is this will actually be tailored to you. It'll say UNG. But over here on the left-hand side, you have a whole bunch of helpful links. This video library can come in really handy. Like I said to the group yesterday, I don't promote working on your homework at 11 o'clock at night, but sometimes that's the time when you have to do it. And there may not be somebody else around to answer a question about the platform. If that's the case, this is your first kind of line of defense, is you want to go to that video library and you'll find a whole ton of videos that walk you through how to look at different bits and pieces of the program, as well as how to enroll a student. How do I find a certain report? What does this data mean? All of that information is going to be right there in the video library. Another thing that I do want to show you right here is your test admin scripts. When you're giving the diagnostic assessment to a student, this is the script that you're going to want to use to read to them before they do the assessment. The reason why I point this out is because it does talk about how students should try their best. And while that seems like that should be a given, we all know, and maybe we were one of them, that person that just does not want to take the test. And so they will just click and click and click and click and click until they're done. That is absolutely what they do not want to do for this assessment because it is an adaptive diagnostic, which means every single answer they give, it's going to determine the next question that they get, if it's going to go up or if it's going to go down. If they're just clicking for the sake of clicking, it's not going to be able to give you true information because it's trying to make sense of the nonsense, essentially, that it's being fed. And that causes the assessment to take significantly longer. So that usually me saying that, the first question is, how long does it take to do this? So the first time they take it will always be the longest because that's where we're going to get our baseline information for your student. If we are talking if we're talking, is everybody elementary in this? Okay, great. So for elementary, in reading or math, typically the first time you take it, the longest I have ever really seen it take is about 30 to 35 minutes. It can be shorter than that. Also, it does not have to be taken all at one time. So if you have a student who needs to get up and move around, if they get screen fatigue, any of that kind of stuff, you can pause it and you can resume it the next time that they're together. If something also happens and they're not able to take it while you're sitting right there with them, they do have the ability to, as long as they have internet, they can log into the platform to take it. Okay. Same with the Edge program. As long as they have internet connection, they can log on and use the Edge program. So let's look at a couple of the different components that will be of benefit to you all once a student takes the diagnostic assessment. I'll show you here in a minute how you're going to add your student and assign the assessment to them. But while I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and show you the scores and reports that will help give you that data-driven, that data information so that you can start making some recommendations and some plans. So from scores and reports, I'm going to go into ELA first. I'll also show you the math side because I know that you have that opportunity to both do, not both, but to do either ELA or math. So we'll start here in ELA. The thing that I want to point out to you is in ELA, we cover 7 strands. So high frequency words, word recognition, phonics, phonemic awareness, spelling, vocabulary, and comprehension. And there's a few things that I want to point out to you. The biggest thing that kind of jumps off the page to everybody is where this NT is located. Because it's an adaptive diagnostic, this means that the student was not tested in that area because whatever their scores were that led up to that component, the program determined either the program determined that they are not ready for that area. So one of the benefits of having an adaptive diagnostic is that your students are not going to feel defeated walking away from the assessment because it's only going to test them within their range of knowledge and then some. So it's not every student is going to get the exact same question, and not every student's going to get the question in the exact same order because it's constantly adapting based on that specific student. So we're going to go ahead and I'm actually going to use Sarah Beck here as the example. So she's a 3rd grader. And if you look at her scores, one way to understand how this works is for her high frequency words, she's performing at a 1st grade, 1st month level. She's at a mid kindergarten. So 0 is kindergarten. She's at a mid kindergarten in word recognition and an end of year kindergarten for phonics. So that's how the scoring ends up looking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the reports. And there's lots of great reports that you can look at. This teacher parent report is a really great one to share with your partner teacher because of the way that it breaks it down. But for today's sake, I'm going to show you the special education report because this is where it's going to kind of break everything down and help you make your plan. So this takes you to our IEP tool. So you're going to have the students' information here. The summary of their strand scores will be here. Then what you're going to be able to do is here's where all of those individual strands are. So if we say that we want to work on phonics with this student, she's at a late kindergarten. Again, you can see here, she's at a late kindergarten level. Maybe phonics is where we want to start with her in regards to her IEP or her plan. So we're going to look at present levels. What you're going to do is where it says align to standard, you have a drop-down menu where you're going to be able to select Georgia standards. This will become really helpful when you have to incorporate the standards standards into your plans, or when you're in the classroom down the line and you have to have the standard posted in your classroom, this is a great kind of one-stop shop to find it really quickly. So when we're looking at present levels, that's what it's going to default to is the student's present level. So we can see here that Sarah can identify all beginning sounds. She's at a mid to late kindergarten level, and she's at 25% mastery of this actual skill because the skill continues on into other grades. This is the standard, the Georgia standard that aligns with her current grade level standard. And this is the grade level standard for third grade because that's what she's enrolled in. And again, you would be able to come over here, drop down, select the standard, and here's the verbiage of that standard. When I scroll down a little bit further, here's your prescriptive profile. This becomes the foundation piece that you can use for your narrative path. I am not going to tell you that this is exactly word for word what you should be using for your narrative path, but it is a great solid foundation to get a picture of how your student is performing. So it will write out the highlight areas of success, as well as areas that it has seen that the data pulled showing areas that the student needs to have some support in. This is a fully editable field, so you're able to go in and add any additional observations you have or anything else that your professor or that your campus has expressed they would like included in a narrative class.
So you are not required to do a present level for this class. However, this is a really good example of one that you may want to keep in mind for your ECSP 4000 class, because in that class you will be writing one. So keep that in mind as you are thinking about both classes and how both classes, there's some overlap there.
Yeah. So from here, the one last piece that I'm going to show you here before I make one little change is where it says EDGE scores. When we talk progress monitoring, EDGE is not a requirement for you all for the course to use, but it is a tool that's available for you if you want to utilize it. And right here is where you are going to see a really easy way to kind of capture how much the student has been using it and what they've been doing with it. So what it's going to do is it's going to actually give you the name of the lesson that they were in, the percentage that they completed or scored, how long they were in the assessment, and it will date and timestamp it for you. So again, it becomes really beneficial progress monitoring data. I'm sorry? Okay. So that's just one place that you'll be able to see the progress monitoring component. Now what I'm going to show you is the instructional skills piece. So this is where it's going to help you start to identify where you want to go with your student. How much growth do we want to see, and what skills do we want them to be able to accomplish? So I'm going to start it out by showing you 4 because that's typically what we would look at. You can select up to 10. That's a really, really big, big bite to take. So I like to do 4 when we are talking over the course of an entire school year. And then I'm going to break it down a little bit further for it being this semester for you all. But when I come in here and I do that instructional skills, now what it's going to do is it's going to break it down into 4 skills that we would like to see her accomplish. And so when you look at this, what would happen is we would recommend this becoming the skill that you want to convert to your annual goal for your student. And the reason why is because ultimately we want to see the growth of a student being 1.5 to 2 years of growth when they're behind. And so that's exactly what this is going to give us. So it will actually help us jump all the way up to 58% mastery, which gives us, like I said, in this area, she's at a late kindergarten. So she's going to actually be jumping almost 2 full grade levels if we're able to get this goal accomplished. Now, what you'll see a lot when you're looking at IEPs, and one of the most frustrating piece when I was a teacher was I would get an IEP with a goal and absolutely no path to get there. And so it was left on me as the teacher to figure it out. And then that's also the issue with a lot of assessments is you get a numerical score, but no kind of breakdown as to the why, like what made that, where does that skill kind of start? But what this does is when I look at this, I know that this is going to be my annual goal, but now I have 3 short-term objectives to make sure that I'm on track to make sure that we complete that annual goal. So I know before I can even consider thinking about long vowels, the first thing I need to do is focus on those short vowel sounds. And then we want to try to hit that goal first, and then the second goal and the third. But now, because we're only in a semester course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, instead of doing 4, we're going to drop it down to 2. Okay. I'm going to drop it to 2. I'm going to hit refresh. And now I'm able to sit there and say, okay, this breaks it down a little bit further. If we were to still able to hit those 2 goals, we would still be at a year to almost a year and a half worth of growth for this student, which is great. And so that makes her goal for this semester to be that she would be able to read all words with short vowels. But before we can do that, we want to look at making sure she can read some words with short vowels. Is this making sense? Does anybody have any questions?
So I will tell you that one of the things you have to do as part of this is you have to have 2 objectives. So these 2 objectives would be appropriate. However, they are not SMART goals. Okay, so this is your start for writing your goal, but it is not the entire goal that you will be writing. You're going to have to write something more substantial for your student. And also, the other thing that you're going to need to look at is when you first meet with the student, what it says here is that, she will read some words with short vowels. You need to figure out what short vowels does she already know. So that's where you're going to be digging a little bit deeper and thinking more about your student and then going based off of that.
So, and I can show you another report that will help with that identification. Like I said, there's a summary report here and there's a teacher parent report. And so this just kind of gives a good breakdown. And this becomes really, really helpful, especially it's called a teacher parent report for a reason, because it's not written for only educators to understand. You'll start to see a bunch of things written in educator speak, and it just absolutely goes over everybody else's head if they are not an educator that's in the room. So it's written really well for parents and other members on the team to understand if they are not constantly in the educational setting. So this report pulls together using high frequency word recognition and phonics and the spelling subtest to make sure that we understand how this child reads words. Then it pulls in oral vocabulary for how they understand it, and then how they put it all together with that reading comprehension. But down here, you can see if phonics is your area that you want to focus on, you will be able to see the areas in which the student tested correctly will have a check mark. If they did not test correctly, it will be an open box. And if they were not tested at all because of the assessment, it will have an NT next to it. Then down here, you'll also see the phonemic awareness task, same information, giving the plus and minus for that. And then when you start to jump into this, and this is something that I didn't talk to the group yesterday about, you can look at these recommended activities. And this is a great place if you are at the point where you're going, okay, I'm ready to start, but I don't know where to start. This is a great kind of area just to kind of give you some examples of what this might look like. And we recommend using this when we're talking with our parents, because sometimes you'll often hear people say, well, their parents aren't involved, their parents aren't supportive. And a lot of times it's not because they don't want to be, it's because they don't know how. And so if we can give those opportunities and those recommendations of really quick, easy ways to help bridge the learning that's happening in the classroom over to home, sometimes we can see some major leaps, some major growth happen. So these recommended activities become really beneficial. So I'm going to quickly jump over to the
I'm just going to pop in really quick. So yeah. Everyone, That's going to be so incredibly helpful for you. So as you're building your intervention plan and you're thinking about what am I going to do the first day I meet with my student? What am I going to do that? That's going to, using that report, using that parent teacher report, that's going to give you your starting off point. Can you use those activities? 100%. You can absolutely use those activities when you are working with your student, and you should. That's why we're using this software. That's why I'm teaching, getting you taught how to use this, and we're practicing using it, because your teachers are not coming up with brand new quizzes every single day in your classroom. There are things they're using to do that, and this is teaching you how to use one of those tools.
Yeah. So that's the reading side. And it's one of those things where if you all as a group decide, in a couple of weeks, once you kind of have the assessment under your belt and you want to look at some stuff a little bit further, I'm more than happy to jump on and kind of walk through some additional pieces. So again, that's just me again saying, please don't hesitate to ask, because you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes it's just somebody saying, oh, well, we have a report for that. So please feel free to ask those questions. So I'm going to jump over to math really quick, in the event that we have some people who are going to use math as the subject that you are addressing. There are a few differences between the math and the ELA side. So we, again, are broken down into strands. We offer 5 strands. So that's numbers and operations, measurement, data analysis, geometry, and algebraic thinking. So where you will see most assessments end will be at that strand score or at the cumulative score. But what we started to understand was that that doesn't really tell us a whole lot about the student, because again, we know that there are gaps there. For instance, we'll look at Sarah again, this 3rd grader. She's performing at a first grade, first mid to end of year grade level across math. But she's pretty close to being on level when it comes to geometry, but she's really far behind in measurement. So when we're trying to understand where these scores come from, you have the ability to look at these individual tabs that align with those strands. And actually, when you click on them, now you're going to see a data point for every skill that is assessed under that strand. So most assessments that you see will not go into this much detail. And it becomes, again, beneficial because it's not just saying, well, they struggle with numbers and operations. This is saying, okay, well, I can see here, we really are struggling with comparing and ordering. Okay, but we're actually pretty high with numbers and place value, so we're looking kind of at all of these different numbers to see where we're at. So then what you would have the ability to do is we'll come again back to Sarah. We're now going to go to her special education report, same report, and then I'll come back to the summary report here in a second. The special education report, exactly the same. The only difference is kind of the depth of skills because of the way that it's broken out. So you'll want to, again, come in, adjust to your Georgia standards under the aligning to standards. And you'll see that we're again on present level. And now what you're going to see is her present levels for every skill she was assessed on in that strand. Okay. So it's no longer, well, your student struggles with fractions. Okay, no, we understand that this student is at the level of where she's able to compare fractions with the same denominator. Okay, so it breaks it all the way down and gives you a true present level for where she's at. Okay. Again, you don't have the full robust foundational path in math as you do in ELA, but it does still highlight areas of success as well as areas where they need some additional support. I also kind of like how very succinct it is, because it gives you an opportunity to build from it without kind of getting lost in the language as it is. But what we're going to do is now look at those instructional skills. So I'm going to come in here and you're going to see again, I'll start at the 4 and then we'll break it down into the 2. So for instance, we can see here that comparing and ordering for Sarah, probably not one that we really need to focus on because she's actually performing pretty high at it. because she would hit 100% by this second objective. And then she would be ahead of her level if we continue there. So one that I would recommend for her would be, let's look at numbers and just actual numbers themselves. So again, we want to look at having a growth of a year and a half. And so that would allow us to hit that growth. She would gain all the way to 56% if we were to hit this annual goal. But because we want to look at that semester, let's go ahead and break it down to 2. So now if we wanted numbers to be the goal that we are targeting, we would look at Sarah will identify corresponding cardinal number. And that would, again, bring her to about a year and a half worth of growth, bringing her to 33% of mastery of this skill. This skill, if I remember right, this skill is mastered at the 4th grade level. So it's understandable for her to not be at 100% because she's a 3rd grader, okay? So that's where you'll find these. And so with math, you get a little bit more information as to the instructional path because it's broken down so definitively by skill. And again, you could do it for measurement, same thing. So whichever area or whichever strand you saw that you wanted to work with from there, that's where you would go in here. Any questions on this?
Oh, I'm just going to pop in. So you can
Sure.
see, Jennifer, can you just scroll down a little bit there?
Yeah.
So you can see how these 2 objectives here that you have can be easily moved from this objective into your SMART goal. And your SMART goal is going to be so much more specific in math, as opposed to they're going to read some words with short vowel sounds and most words with short vowel sounds. So we have like something really distinctive. I actually like the numbers and operations when you're looking at place value, because if you look at the place value question, it's identify place value in 1 and 2 digit numbers, and then place value in up to 3 digit numbers. So we work on those 1 and 2 digit, we move up to 3 digits, or step by step getting there, and the math just breaks it down so nicely for you. So think of when you're deciding, what you're going to work on with your student, whether it's reading or math. This is why I like you working on the math, because it makes it a little easier for you to figure out what exactly am I going to do and how am I going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and then also one of the benefits of having it kind of broken out this way is sometimes you will have parents ask, well, but the goal is this one, but you now have the data to back up and saying, I know that this is the goal and this is the goal we're working at. But before we can do that, we want to make sure that we're doing this because it's got to be done in these incremental growth. We have to grow, incrementally. We can't just go from 0 to 100 and think all of it is going to be learned. So one other, another report that I want to show you here in the math area, if you end up having to do any kind of parent-teacher conference or anything like that, the math summary report is really helpful. What this is going to do is it's going to break down and color code for you the entire assessment. So it's a really great color-coded one-pager that just breaks down, here's their grade level score, where they're performing, and where that skill maxes out, okay? And so they're able to see where they're at. It gives you a little key here, tells you those red scores are showing non-mastery of the lowest skill or concept for that area. And then the red arrow indicates the subtest that the student was a quarter of a year or more behind. Now, if you have somebody, if you're working with a 5th grader that you know is performing at a kindergarten level, and you know it's going to be flooded with red arrows, you can turn the arrows off, because sometimes seeing all of those red arrows can be really kind of disheartening. So you can turn that off if it's something that you plan on sharing with either parents or the student themselves. You can turn that off, but all of the color coding here in the actual score will stay the same. But this is a really great one-pager to go into a meeting with and say, hey, here's a picture of where we're at in math.
Really quick, can you go back to that report real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of my students from last year had picked a specific goal for their student because they were thinking my student is a third grader, but the GLS, the grade level standard, they were only at so look at where under geometry strand and location and direction. My student automatically saw that 0.9. And their immediate thought was, that's what I need to work on with that student. But it's actually not, because that student has maxed out at that. It's in green. So that would not be a great area to start. What would be a better area would be those 3D shapes, because that's an area that she really needs. Okay, so that's the difference. So you have to look at both the GLS and the max GLS. You can't just look at the GLS and say, oh, that's automatically what I'm going to work on with this student because that's really low. It may be that they've already maxed out at that area.
And you'll see that if they've maxed out, that number will turn green. And then that's also where those red arrows work as really great indicators. That if you're looking at it and there's not an arrow there, that means usually the kid's pretty okay in those areas. The arrow is the indicator of the next skill we want to make sure that we're focusing on. Okay. Any other questions about the math report or anything like that before I move on? Any other questions in general up to what I've talked about? Because I know I've talked about a lot and I've thrown a lot at you. Okay. So I'm going to, you will have a copy of this website. The most important page is going to be this one right here for you. I have done everything I can to make this kind of a one-stop shop slide, so that if you have any questions, information on how to log in, I'm going to go over that in a moment. And then we're going to talk through how to add a student, and the requirements of how you're going to code that, and then how you're going to queue a student to take the assessment. And then after we talk about that, we'll talk a little bit about if you're going to use Edge, how to see what the lessons are and how to assign a lesson to a student. Okay. So what I want to point out here is your login information. When you go to the Let's Go Learn website, there's a little green button at the very top that says login, and it's going to take you to the login page. Your login is going to be teacher at, and then whichever professor you have, it's going to be their last name. Okay. Then your password is going to be sped underscore your professor's last name with a capital letter and the number 1. Okay. So everybody in your class is going to have the same login information. Your school code is going to be UNG. And the reason why we've done it this way is there's a few reasons, actually. One, because when you're in a program like this, students move, people change, like all sorts of stuff can happen where all of a sudden you can show up one day and that kid is no longer there, but you are still responsible for a project. So by us doing it this way, it allows you to still have access to some data for other students. And it gives you an opportunity to look at data for other students and talk to your peer who's working with that student. And you guys have an opportunity to just kind of talk about what you're seeing. What are some similarities? What are some differences? And you have an automatic person just kind of built in to talk through different steps and different ideas for making your plan moving forward. So that's why we have it set up that way. Dr. Sears, is there anything you wanted to say about logging in, or did I get it all covered?
Oh, that's pretty much it. That's how you're going to log in.
I have a question.
Okay. Yeah.
For the username, is it teacher at Jennifer Sears or just Sears?
Good question. It's just teacher at Sears.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so I'm going to show you this video on how to add a student. It is super simple, super straightforward, and then I'm going to walk through the formatting that you're going to need for it.
To add a new student, click on the Add New Student button. Then fill in the student information. First name, last name, their date of birth, their grade level, then the student's school ID, and then give the student a username and a password. You can also enroll a student in another class here, and then click on Add a Student, and now the student has been created.
Okay. So
my recommendation for the student's password, I know Jennifer put the year, the month, and the day for the student's birthday, ABC123. Something really simple that you're going to remember. So you can do, and it doesn't have to be capitals or anything like that. There are no guidelines for that with this. So ABC123 is super easy.
Okay. I can go in, I'll go in and actually to update that as well to that if we want to use that as the default student password. That way everybody has it by the time they get to identifying the student and everything. So I'll make sure that that gets updated as well. The other thing that I do want to point out is you do have to have their birthday and you do need to know their grade. You are going to put the grade that they are enrolled in. And I stress that now because when we talk about queuing the assessment for the student, you will have the opportunity to adjust the grade level that they start at if you need to. But you do not need to have that student ID to enter your student. The other piece that I want to point out is the way that you should be formatting your student's name. So it's going to be the student's true first name and your last name. And we're doing that for the sake of confidentiality and data usage moving forward. Did you have anything that you wanted to say to that, Dr. Sears?
Nope, that's just how we keep it all confidential. So your name and then the student's last name. For the student username, because you do need a username for the student, I think what I used with other people is having the student just put in their first name or something. Well, I guess the student first name probably wouldn't work. Then it could pop up with other people, right?
I think if I remember right from last year, it was we did the student first name, teacher's last name, and then for the username, it was just all combined.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
If I remember right.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So if it would be helpful for you all, I can go in and add username and put that example right there. If that would help, I can do that as well. Okay. So now we're going to go over queuing your students in the diagnostic assessment. So something that I do want to show you before I do that is the tab that we're going to do that in is the test queue. Okay. So class is where you're going to add your student. You will have a class added. We just haven't had a chance to add the class itself yet. So you will have a class added for you, and then you would add your student here. And then now the video I'm going to show you is under the test queue.
To queue a class assessment using a comprehensive diagnostic, go to the Test Queue tab, followed by clicking on Manage Class Queue. Here, you'll go to the Comprehensive Diagnostics option. You'll select your test. You can choose from ADAM, DOMA Algebra, DOMA Pre-Algebra, DORA, and DORA Phonemic Awareness Diagnostic. Click on your desired assessment and give it just a moment, and then you will see that your students are queued. This class has 7 students, and 7 students are queued. For Spanish assessments, you'll go ahead and choose an assessment in the Spanish section, go to Actions, and click on Queue. You can see now that all 7 students are queued.
So the difference that you're going to see for how you all will do it, and I'm going to see if I can find another video that shows the individual queuing, because this is really to queue all students. What you're going to do is, you do have it? Okay, okay. Is when you come in here, you'll have added your student and you'll see them over here on the left-hand side. What you would do instead of clicking Manage Class Queue, you're going to come over and actually select the Add or Edit under Test Queue here. And it will take you to that same screen. but now it's for the individual student. So you would again go through, you would select the diagnostic assessment. And this is where I was talking earlier about the grade override. So if you have a student that is enrolled in 5th grade, you already know that they are performing at a 1st grade level. You can come in here and do the override. So you can actually override and have the assessment start at 1st grade instead of having it start at the 5th grade. Okay. And then from there, you would just hit Q. And then you'll see if it says ready, it's good to go. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. So the next piece, and we didn't go into it a lot in depth yesterday, was about EDGE. And well, actually, before I do that, we want to talk about formative assessments. Is that right? We want to show the formative assessments piece. Okay. So for your progress monitoring piece, you're going to be needing to show data points for progress monitoring. And we've actually built in a really fast and easy way to do that instead of making you go to a whole bunch of drop-down menus and trying to pick and choose of where things are at. So if you're in the ELA, if you're going to be doing the assessment in on a student in reading, I'm here in the ELA side, and I can select the instructional placement here. You can do it for, let's say, word recognition. We'll do instructional placement. So now what you can see is, let's say we're working with Tamara. We see that she needs to work on the skill. We'll work to read words in isolation in the 5th grade level. Let's say you do a one-on-one with her. Great, you're rocking and rolling that lesson. You want to see if it's stuck. You're able to come right from here, select her name and hit Q. That's going to automatically queue that formative assessment for her. So it's going to queue the formative assessment word recognition level 5. It's going to show up on her dashboard. She's going to take it. She's going to show that she's a rock star. And that data is going to automatically update on her report for you. And you're going to see her name then here. She'll move from this spot. She'll move up to under level 6. Okay. So there's a few places to see how they're doing progress monitoring wise, but I like to show this one because you can queue the assessment for that skill right from here, as opposed to going in and selecting all of the 50 million drop downs. And then you watch them kind of climb through this. Another, and so on the math side, just to show you really quick, if you're working on a specific subtest, let's say fractions, because it's always fractions, we can select instructional placement. Oh, they haven't added it to the demo yet. It is live, it's just not in our demo yet, but you will be able to, again, work with, say you want to work with Marion on identifying fractions using manipulatives. You would be able to select her box, and then that Q button will be there on your side.
I don't think it's live on this side either, because I tried.
Is it not
I just
on your side?
No, because
Okay.
I was just trying to do it with the student that I put in there, and it's not there.
Okay, I will make a note on that to see when it will be, because I thought it was already there.
Sorry.
So I apologize. No, it's good. It's good. It's good to know that. And that, I'm really glad that you said something, because that's something that I wanted to kind of stress to the group here. If you come upon something that just doesn't seem like it's right, or doesn't seem like something like something's not there that you think should be there, please let me know. Because sometimes I'm not in the platform as deep as you are sometimes on a daily basis. And so if there's all of a sudden something just doesn't look right, please let me know so I can make sure that it gets addressed really quickly. Also, when it comes to resources, if you are looking for something and you do not find it, let me know, because if that resource doesn't exist, I want to make sure that we create one so that it helps for the next group as well. The last piece that I was going to show you is on instruction. So when we come and we're looking at the EDGE program, so this is that individualized instruction. Once a student takes the diagnostic assessment, and we go to Edge, you will be able to enroll a student individually, or you can, it's really kind of up to you how you want to do it, Dr. Sears. What I would recommend, what we typically recommend, is just automatically enrolling the class instead of doing it all individually. And so what you're able to do is once a student takes the assessment, the program is going to automatically look at their data and create that playlist for them. Okay. But Dr. Sears and I were talking earlier about how do we know what lessons are coming up for the student. And so what you're able to do is come over to this info and you're able to see upcoming lessons. So you have usage details, upcoming lessons, and certificates. So the certificates are lessons that they've completed and they've earned some kind of medal of bronze, silver, or gold on. But in the upcoming lessons, you're able to see the next 25 lessons that are loaded for the student. Okay. And this is again based on their information from the assessment. So it's going to go ahead, it's going to automatically work through based on this order. If you don't want them to, let's say you're as a class going to be working on animals together, but that's going to happen in 2 days, and you think that your student might work on this ahead of time, you can come in and click disable. And that's just going to drop that lesson down here to the deactivated lessons. Okay. Keeps them sometimes from working way ahead and then coming in and dominating a lesson, being like, I already know this. So you're able to kind of bypass those kind of moments, but then you're able to go back and enable it. So if you, do a whole lesson on animals and now you want to enable it again, you can click enable, it'll update, and then it'll put it right back where it should have been. Okay. If you hit skip, what this is going to do is it's going to keep the lesson on your student's dashboard, but it's going to put a skip stamp on top of it. So they will still see it there and it will look like the student skipped it. Okay. Now, you do have the opportunity to assign a specific lesson if you want to. So if you know you're working on a specific skill with a student, you can come into instruction and go to assignments, and you can select, math, current, and create assignment. And now you're going to you can go in, you can select the student that you want to assign it to. You'll click next. You'll select your subject. And then this is all of those lessons that fall into that category. So there's a lot in there. So you can narrow it down by searching. So we can say common, or let's see. So if you want to see fractions, and then you also have the opportunity here to preview the lesson and see what the lesson is going to look like. And then you can assign it from there. Any questions? Does that answer your question, Dr. Sears? Okay, great.
That's how you can get in to say, okay, we're going to work on place value with this student. That's what you chose. That's how you can get in there to get those place value lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm going to give you another short little video on this also, everyone, so that you can see step by step how to go through and do that. Yeah.
And that's also here in the step 3. So we have this broken down for you to just be kind of a step-by-step process. So you're not trying to make sense of all of the information at once. The first thing you want to be able to know and understand is preparing the assessment, assigning the assessment, making sure they take the assessment. And then once you get on the other side of that, then you're going to want to look at the data. And these are going to show you how to look at those individual reports for reading and math. And then there's also additional helpful videos here in the PD library that will walk through all of the different reports that are there. And then if you're using Edge and progress monitoring, that's where these 2 sections are going to come into play if you're going to assign those formative assessments or if you're going to utilize Edge as well. Any questions? I know we've thrown a lot of information at you. Okay. So just really quickly, because like I said, it's really important. I want you to be able to feel like you can get a hold of me at any point in time. So if you ever want to just book a quick meeting with me, you can absolutely do that. This QR code will take you to my calendar. Feel free to throw 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes on there, and we can walk through whatever you need help with in the platform. This is also my email address and my phone number. If your cooperating teacher or anybody else that you're working with has any questions about Let's Go Learn, or like Dr. Sears said earlier, sometimes you may have somebody just say, hey, is there any way we can do this for the whole class? We absolutely, first of all, the answer to that is absolutely yes. But they are more than welcome to reach out to me. And so it kind of takes that responsibility off of you. They can reach out to me and I can get that set up for them. Any questions?
So your goal this week is you should have started thinking about who your student's going to be, and you want to get your student into Let's Go Learn. We are going to be uploading this presentation, the video, and everything from today and from last night will be uploaded into D2L for all of you by tomorrow. So you can go in tomorrow, and if you want to review the video. I also have a couple of short videos I made last year that you can go to. For those of you who are in my class, I did send out to all of you a link earlier today that you can sign up for 15, 20 minutes to meet individually with me, and I can even walk you through it. And I'm happy to do that for you, okay? But you want to get this initial evaluation out of the way. This first time meeting with your student and doing their evaluation does not count towards the 4 to 5 times you're meeting with the student. This is completely separate, okay? But this is going to give you that starting off point. This is what you're learning in your IRIS module this week. This is how to do that database decision making, okay? This is your data so that you can now make those decisions of what you're going to work on with your student. But remember, we're looking at individual skills. We're not looking at math as a whole. We want to narrow it down to what do they need right now so that they can be successful in school. Okay. I am going to put into the chat a link for you all to go to right now and do this very short quiz, which really isn't a quiz, but it's really just a check-in. The answer to the last question is Ellie. And that is how I know you came today, because you can answer the last question, unless you already know me and you know that my dog's name is Ellie. But Ellie is the answer to the last question. But if you have questions at all this week, when you're getting into this, when you're starting working, please reach out to Jennifer, reach out to me. Even if I'm not your professor, I'm happy to help you through this, to get you started with this. But you're going to find as you're doing this, how much easier this key assessment is going to be for you when you're using this. It's going to do that formative assessment piece for you, so you don't have to overthink it. When we get into progress monitoring in a couple weeks and you do that module, you can see, oh, I can see how this all fits nicely together. That's how we teach this class. Okay. Are there any other questions before we let you go?
You're also quiet. Like,
all right, friends. So go ahead, log in, get yourself started. If you have questions, please reach out to me. Thank you all for coming in the evening. I know it's hard to take that time, but hopefully this was helpful to you. And thank you very much to Jennifer and to the Let's Go Learn team for once again allowing us to use your wonderful program and to have our students experience it.
Sounds great. We're excited. Like I said, please don't hesitate to reach out.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a great evening.